I worked the night shift at a truck stop just off Route 219 in rural Pennsylvania. Most nights it's dead quiet, just the hum of the freezers, the flicker of the buzzing sign outside, and the endless hiss of trucks idling in the dark. I thought it'd be easy money when I started 6 months ago. I was wrong. The first thing the manager, Dave, told me wasn't about stocking shelves or cleaning the bathrooms. It was about the rules. He handed me a laminated sheet yellowed with grease and time. There were 12 of them. Some made sense. Don't leave the register unattended. Check the bathrooms every hour. But others felt wrong. Rule 4. If you see a man with a red baseball cap standing by pump 3 after midnight, don't go outside, turn off the lights, and wait 10 minutes. Rule 7. If a child knocks on the glass asking for help, do not let them in. Rule 12. Never look at the security cameras between 3,000 and 3:31:05 a.m. When I asked what they meant, Dave just said, "You'll learn." He smiled like he didn't want to. The first 2 nights were normal enough. Truckers came in, bought coffee, kept to themselves. I restocked shelves, swept floors. I even started to forget about the list. Until Thursday, it was 12,037 a.m. when I noticed movement by pump 3. A man stood there, still as a post, staring straight at the building. He wore a red cap. At first, I thought maybe he was just zoning out, lost in thought. But he wasn't pumping gas. He wasn't moving at all, just standing there facing the store, eyes black in the sodium light. The hairs on my arms stood up. I looked at the sheet again. Rule 4. My hands shook as I reached up and flipped the switches. The lights in the store went out, one by one. The hum of the refrigerators faded, replaced by silence so heavy it felt alive. I crouched behind the counter, breathing through my teeth. Minutes passed. I checked my phone. 12:45. When I looked up again, the man was gone. Dave called me in the morning. "You did good," he said. "You followed the rule. That's what keeps us safe." I wanted to ask safe from what, but something in his tone told me not to. That night, I caught myself watching the windows, half expecting the man to return. I didn't sleep when I got home. I kept replaying the scene in my mind. The stillness of him, the empty look, like a mannequin placed in the dark just to see if I'd react. By the time I clocked in again, I knew the truck stop wasn't just a place for weary drivers. It was something else, something that demanded rules because the alternative was worse. And that night, I broke one. I broke Rule 7. It wasn't on purpose. It just happened. My shift started at 11. By midnight, the fog had rolled in, thick enough to make the pumps vanish beyond 10 feet. The sign outside flickered between open and a half-dead glow that looked more like OPE. I was half asleep behind the counter, nursing coffee that tasted like rust, when I heard it, a faint tapping on the glass. At first, I thought it was the rain. Then it came again. 3 knocks. Deliberate, small, too soft to be a trucker. I looked up, and my stomach turned to ice. It was a little girl. Couldn't have been more than 8 or 9. She stood outside the front door in a thin, dirty nightgown, barefoot on the wet concrete. Her hair clung to her face. Her eyes were huge, not scared, just empty. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. I froze. My mind went to the list taped beside the register. Rule 7. If a child knocks on the glass asking for help, do not let them in. I told myself it was some kind of prank. Maybe a lost kid from the trailer park down the hill. Maybe someone was filming, waiting to see how I'd react. But she looked so small. Then she whispered, faint but clear, "Please, it's following me." Something twisted in my chest. I couldn't just ignore her. I unlocked the door. The bell chimed as I opened it, the sound too bright for the dead air outside. I stepped forward, scanning the fog. No cars, no movement, just her shivering. "Hey," I said softly, "come inside, okay? You're safe now." Her eyes darted past me, over my shoulder, into the store. Then she whispered again, "It's inside." The air shifted. Cold! Colder than the night outside. My breath came out in a cloud. The lights above flickered once, twice, then went dark. I turned back toward the counter and saw it, a shape behind the coffee station. Too tall, too still. The fog wasn't supposed to be inside, but it was, coiling through the aisles, thick and gray. And within it, something moved, something heavy, dragging against the floor. I grabbed the flashlight from the counter and shined it. For a split second, I saw a face. Pale, eyeless, stretched like wax. Then it was gone. When the lights came back on, the girl was gone too. The front door stood open, fog spilling in through the frame. I slammed it shut, locked it, and ran to the back office. Dave was there in the morning, already waiting. He didn't yell, didn't even look surprised, just sighed like he'd seen this before. "You let her in, didn't you?" he said. I nodded. He walked to the door, peeled a new laminated sheet from his coat, and handed it to me. There were now 13 rules. The new one was at the bottom. Rule 13. If you hear knocking again, do not respond. It's not a child anymore. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching me. Even when the lights were on, even when customers came and went, there was always a cold draft crawling up my spine, whispering that I wasn't alone. I told myself it was guilt, that I was seeing things because I'd broken Rule 7, but the nights after that were too quiet, too clean, like the world was waiting. Dave didn't schedule anyone else for the graveyard shift anymore. He said I handled things well. That's what he called it, handled things, like surviving whatever that was made me reliable. It was a Thursday again when I noticed something new. The cameras, they'd always been there, 10 little black domes in the ceiling corners. But that night, at 2005 7 a.m., one of them clicked. Not a mechanical whir, not the hum of power, a sharp click, like someone turning a lock. I looked up. The red light was blinking faster than usual. Rule 12 floated back into my head. Never look at the security cameras between 3,000 and 3,015 a.m. For weeks I'd wondered why. Now I was alone, curious, and stupid enough to find out. When the clock above the register hit 3,000, the feed on the office monitor flickered. One by one, the cameras turned on, even the ones that hadn't worked for months. The first screen showed the parking lot, empty. The second showed pump 3. The man in the red hat was back. He was closer this time, standing directly under the light. His face was clear, or it should have been, but every time I tried to focus, it blurred like static crawling across his skin. On the third screen, the fog rolled through the store entrance, thick, swirling, and alive. Then the fourth screen lit up. It was the break room. Someone was sitting at the table. I leaned closer. The image crackled, fuzzed, but I could see myself, my uniform, my hands, sitting exactly where I was. Only the other me wasn't watching the screens. He was staring straight at the camera. A thin smile stretched across his face, too wide, too wrong. Then his mouth moved. I couldn't hear it, but I could read it. Turn around. The monitors went black. I froze. The hum of the lights, the fridge, even the crickets outside. Everything stopped. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. My body felt pinned, like the air itself had hardened around me. Then, in the reflection of the monitor, I saw it. Movement behind me. Not me, not exactly, but something that wore my shape. Its head tilted slowly, its eyes hollow pits leaking shadow down its cheeks. I squeezed my eyes shut and whispered to myself, "It's not real. It's not real." The lights snapped back on. The hum returned. The clock read 3006. When I turned, the office was empty. I checked the footage later. There was nothing. No fog, no man, no double. Just static at 3000 a.m., 15 minutes of nothingness. When Dave came in that morning, I told him everything. He just sighed and wrote something on a notepad. Then he handed it to me. A new sheet. 14 rules now. Rule 14, never trust what you see on the cameras, especially if it looks like you. It started with the phone ringing at 12,009 a.m. No one ever called the truck stop that late. The landline barely worked. Half the time it buzzed with static even when no one was on the line. "Still," I answered, "because I always did. Highway fuel and go," I said. My voice came out shaky. Nothing, just the soft hiss of dead air. Then, faintly, I heard breathing. Slow, wet, too close to the receiver. "Who is this?" I asked. The line crackled. Then a whisper, thin, trembling, but familiar. "You shouldn't have opened the door." I froze. The voice was mine. For a second, I thought I was imagining it. Sleep deprivation, paranoia, guilt, all fair possibilities. But then the voice laughed, a dry, hollow sound that rattled through the speaker. "You think the rules will save you," it said, "but they're not for you." The line went dead. I hung up, staring at the receiver like it might start bleeding. The rules were taped right beside the register. I ran my finger down a list, stopping at the new one. Rule 14. It didn't mention calls. That made it worse. At 12:28, the phone rang again. I didn't pick up. At 12,031, it rang a third time. By the fourth, I yanked the cord from the wall. The ringing stopped for a moment. Then my cell phone started buzzing. Unknown number. My heart hammered. I shouldn't have answered, but I did. "Hello." This time, the voice wasn't mine. It was a woman, calm, tired, whispering like she didn't want anyone else to hear. "You broke the circle," she said. "Now they know you." "Who is this?" I asked, my throat tightening. "The girl, the fog, the other you. They're not separate. They're echoes," she said. "That place keeps echoes. You can't erase them, only obey them." Her breathing hitched. Then she said something I couldn't quite hear. Just fragments. "Oh, door open, 3:15. Don't look." The line cut out. I stood there for a long time, gripping my phone until my knuckles turned white. When I finally looked up, I noticed something on the counter. The rule sheet. But it wasn't laminated anymore. The plastic coating had peeled away, edges curling like burnt paper. And underneath, faintly in smeared ink, a message scrawled across the bottom. "Rule 15. If the phone rings after midnight, let it ring. Don't answer. It's not for you." I hadn't written it, neither had Dave, but the handwriting, it looked like mine. At 3,000 a.m., the phone rang again. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It rang 11 times, then stopped. The silence afterward was thick, vibrating, like the air itself was holding its breath. Then came a sound from the back office, the faint click of the camera monitor turning on by itself. Static filled the screen. Then a frame flickered, a frozen image of me at the counter, holding the phone to my ear, mouth open in mid-scream. I was still staring when the bell over the door chimed, but no one came in. I woke up in the break room, still in my uniform. My head ached like I'd been hit with something heavy. The clock on the wall read 11,003 p.m. again, the same time my shift always started. Only, I couldn't remember leaving. The coffee pot was still half full, the same cup beside it, half drunk. The lights hummed, the air smelled faintly of diesel and bleach. Everything looked normal. But outside, the same red truck idled by pump 6, just like it had last night and the night before. I checked the punch clock. The date strip hadn't moved. Thursday, always Thursday. I went to the door, stepped outside. The night was frozen still, no wind, no bugs, just the distant hum of engines that never faded. The fog hung low, almost resting on the ground like a living thing. I could feel it brushing against my ankles, cold and damp. The same radio was playing inside, a low country song looping endlessly. It hit the same line every 20 seconds. The road goes on forever. Then it started over. I turned off the radio. It kept playing. Panic crept up my throat. I called Dave. The line went straight to static, then to that awful breathing I'd heard before. A voice whispered, "You're still here." I dropped the phone. The cameras flickered on again by themselves. The screens showed every corner of the store, but everything was slightly off. The shelves were stocked differently, the lights dimmer, and in every frame a version of me was working. One was mopping, one was restocking, one was at the counter staring out the window at the fog. I watched, horrified, as they all froze in unison. Slowly, all their heads turned toward the cameras, toward me. Then the monitor went black, replaced by white letters crawling across the screen. "You broke the rules. Now the shift doesn't end." The overhead lights flickered, and I bolted for the door. The handle burned my hand, hot, too hot to touch. The glass shimmered like liquid, showing my reflection, only it wasn't me. The figure in the reflection wore my uniform, but his eyes were hollow pits of static, and when he smiled, his mouth split too wide, cracking his cheeks. "Go ahead," he said through the glass. "Leave and see where the road takes you." I grabbed my keys, ran outside anyway. The fog swallowed me whole. I drove for what felt like hours, headlights slicing through the gray. No signs, no towns, no stars. The road stretched endlessly in both directions. Every few miles I saw the same glowing sign ahead. Highway Fuel and Go. Open 24 hours! When I pulled in, the lot was empty. But the store lights were on. And through the window I saw myself behind the counter ringing up a customer that wasn't there. I shut off the engine, trembling. Then I looked at the dashboard clock. 11,003 p.m. The radio clicked back on, whispering that same cursed lyric, "The road goes on forever," and I realized something. Maybe the road did, but I never would. After the road folded back on itself, I stopped trying to escape. The truck stop had become a loop, a trap pretending to be a workplace. I started thinking maybe the rules weren't warnings. Maybe they were instructions to keep the nightmare running smoothly. The next few nights, if you could call them that, were quieter. The fog pressed against the glass like breath, and sometimes I swore I saw silhouettes moving in it, shapes that didn't have enough bones. I stopped checking the cameras, stopped looking at the clock. But the radio never stopped. Then they came. It was around 1,000 a.m. when I heard the crunch of gravel outside. 3 figures stepped out of an 18-wheeler that hadn't made a sound pulling in. Their movements were stiff, too synchronized. They wore trucker caps and denim jackets, but something about the proportions was wrong. Limbs too long, necks too thin. They came inside without a word. The bell above the door didn't chime. I forced a smile. "Evening! Coffee's fresh!" They stared at me. Not at my face. Their eyes were milky, their smiles stretched just a little too wide. One of them finally spoke, voice distorted like a cassette played backward. "We're passing through!" I nodded, trying to keep my breathing steady. "Sure, pumps on, bathrooms around back." All 3 of them turned their heads in perfect unison toward the back hallway. The smell hit me next, something sweet and rotten, like fruit left in a hot trunk. They didn't walk, they glided, feet barely touching the floor. I heard a door creak open and slam shut. Silence. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. I grabbed the flashlight and crept toward the bathrooms. The hallway light flickered, buzzing like a fly in a jar. The men were gone. The air was thick with that sickly, sweet rot. I shined the light under the stall doors, empty, but something was written on the mirror, carved deep into the glass with something sharp. "We never leave. Neither will you." My throat tightened. I backed away, heart pounding. When I reached the counter again, the 3 cups of coffee I'd poured were gone. In their place sat a handful of coins, old, corroded, covered in something dark that wasn't rust. Then I heard them again, voices. Outside. I looked through the window, the same truck still idling, cab lights glowing faintly red. The men were sitting inside now, watching the store, watching me. One of them raised a hand and waved slowly, then the fog swallowed the truck whole. I turned back toward the counter and froze. The rule sheet was different again, freshly laminated. Clean, too clean, 15 rules. A new one at the bottom, Rule 16. When travelers arrive who don't blink, serve them. They've been coming longer than you've been alive. I sank to the floor, shaking, because for the first time I realized the rules weren't written by management, They were written for the building itself, and it was still writing. I thought I understood fear. I thought I'd already seen what this place could do. But then Dave showed me what he kept in the basement. He came in just before sunrise, though I'm not sure that word means anything anymore. The horizon never changes, just the same pale gray, the same mist, the same feeling that time stopped moving. He didn't greet me, didn't ask how the shift went. He just walked straight to the back door and said, "Come with me." I followed him, more out of instinct than trust. His face looked wrong under the fluorescent lights, pale, waxy, like something wearing his skin. We went through the storeroom, past the soda crates and cleaning supplies, to a door I'd never noticed before. No knob, just a padlock and a chain. Dave pulled a key from around his neck and said quietly, "You've lasted longer than most. You deserve to see." He unlocked it, and the smell hit me first, damp concrete, motor oil, and something coppery beneath it. The stairs were narrow, old, carved into stone. At the bottom was a long, low room lit by a single flickering bulb. And on the walls, the rules. Dozens of copies, pinned, stapled, carved, the same handwriting though some were decades old. In the center of the room sat a steel drum filled with dark liquid. The surface shimmered faintly like black glass. I stepped closer, but Dave grabbed my arm. "Don't look too long," he said. I ignored him. I looked anyway. At first it was just my reflection, then it wasn't. My reflection smiled. Its lips moved soundlessly before it reached up, pressed a hand against the inside of the liquid. Ripples spread outward, distorting its face until I couldn't tell if it was mine at all. I stumbled back. Dave didn't move. "That's what we're guarding," he said. "That's what the rules are for." "What is it?" I asked, breath shaking. He stared into the drum, eyes glassy. "A door," he said. "A mouth. It feeds on attention, on recognition. The rules keep it from noticing you too much." I felt sick. "And the people who break them?" He looked at me then, really looked. "You've seen them." My mind flashed with images. The man at pump 3, the girl in the nightgown, the travelers who didn't blink. "They weren't people anymore," he said. "They're echoes. It uses them to talk to us." I backed toward the stairs, but Dave's tone hardened. "You can't leave. You broke too many rules. It knows you now." Something moved in the liquid. A ripple formed into a hand, pale, slick, stretching upward like it wanted to climb out. Dave pulled the chain across the door again, locking it tight from the outside. "I can't let you go," he whispered. "If you walk away, it follows." I pounded on the door, shouting his name, but he didn't answer. Behind me, the surface of the liquid began to stir again, and this time, it whispered my name. The whisper came from everywhere and nowhere, curling through the air like smoke. It said my name over and over, sometimes soft, sometimes stretched into something inhuman. I pressed my back against the door, heart hammering so hard I could taste blood. The liquid in the drum bubbled, black ripples spreading across its surface. Shapes formed inside, faces, hundreds of them, pressed together like something trapped beneath glass. They mouthed my name, their movements perfectly synchronized. "Dave!" I screamed. "Let me out!" No answer. The bulb overhead flickered. Every time it went dark, the faces in the drum were closer. On the third flicker, I felt breath against my ear, cold, wet, steady. I turned. No one was there, but the air shimmered, thick like heat waves, even though the basement was freezing. The voices spoke again, merging into one. "You look too long. You listen too closely." Then, quieter, "Now you work for us." Something dragged across the floor, a chain or maybe a limb. The smell of rust grew stronger. I ran up the stairs, slamming my shoulder into the door. It held. I screamed until my throat tore. Then I heard the padlock click open. The door creaked. Dave stood there, only it wasn't Dave anymore. His eyes were gone, just two pits leaking black tears. His mouth stretched into a grin too wide for his face. "Shift's not over," he said. "You're up next." He grabbed my arm, his skin cold as stone. I wrenched free and bolted past him, through the storeroom, out into the flickering light of the truck stop. The fog was thicker than ever, pressing against the windows like a tide. The sign outside flashed red, open forever. I ran for my car. The key turned, but the engine didn't start. The radio came alive instead, whispering in my own voice. "You can't clock out!" The fog seeped through the vents, crawling over the seats like fingers. My breath fogged the windshield from inside. I stumbled out of the car and looked back at the store. Through the glass, I saw the counter, the aisles, the buzzing lights, and me standing behind the register, my reflection, my replacement. He smiled and waved. The bell over the door chimed. I turned. The travelers were back, the ones who didn't blink. Behind them, the man in the red cap, the little girl, the others. Dozens of them, their faces blurring like smeared paint. They filled the lot, watching, waiting. The door to the truck stop swung open on its own. The air inside glowed faintly red. A low hum pulsed from within, deep enough to shake my ribs. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The fog surrounded everything. The road, the sky, the world. Only the truck stop remained, so I walked back inside. The lights steadied. The radio changed songs. A bell jingled. Behind the counter, a new laminated sheet waited for me, crisp, clean, freshly printed. 16 rules now. At the bottom, in familiar handwriting, it read, Rule 17, when your shift begins again, do not look for the door. There isn't one anymore. The register beeped. A customer entered. I smiled automatically. Welcome to Highway Fuel and Go, I said. We're open forever.